I'm fine with that. But then I know like in years past, like you kind of gone back and forth.
All right, welcome back. How was lunch? Good. I got a chance to eat a little bit. Fantastic. Well, welcome back to our afternoon keynote. We have a huge honor and privilege to get an opportunity to listen to our next speaker, Cesar Cruz. Haha, funny. He's right there. So his bio is in your books. You can definitely read it, read up on his life, his accomplishments, and they're numerous, and it takes up a lot of room on the page. And certainly he's going to talk a lot about his own life and his own experiences. And so rather than take up his time, which I don't want to do, I just want to give the floor over to Cesar. Thank him so much on behalf of E4FC, on behalf of all the folks that are here today, on behalf of all the folks that it took to get this. We're incredibly honored and thankful and grateful to be able to share this space, to be able to listen to your words, and to be able to share this space with you. So with that, Cesar, come up.
I think before I begin, I want to thank Lisbeth Gomez. She's the co-founder of the Homies Empowerment, and she's going to help me out with the PowerPoint. I'm extremely nervous for a lot of reasons. I'm extremely nervous because if you go backwards in time 20 years, 1993, 94, I slept in this building. I was homeless at the time. This was a year after 4 police officers were acquitted in the beating of Rodney King. I was a young 17, 18-year-old coming to UC Berkeley, undocumented but afraid. I wasn't unafraid yet. And I wasn't a political organizer. I wasn't an activist. I hadn't found my voice. There's no way I would be speaking at Wheeler Hall. The students that were organizing at the time organized a rally outside of here at Sproul Hall. And then they said, let's take over University Avenue. And then they said, let's take over the 580 freeway. And before you know it, we've taken over the Oakland Bay Bridge. Who remembers that time? Who was on that bridge? I might have a cellmate. No? So I'm locked up at Santa Rita jail, and all of a sudden, mind you, I'm a 17, almost 18-year-old, clueless, doesn't know his history, doesn't know what he's about, has been coping for a long time with alcohol, and he thinks that the Mexican thing to do is to drink Tecate with lemon and salt. That's the Cesar you're dealing with at that time. And I'm in jail, and I'm dealing with organizers who are freedom fighters and revolutionaries who are talking about Che Guevara, but nobody talks about Corona. And I'm lost, and they're asking me what organization I belong to, and I didn't have an answer. And after I spent some time in jail, and thankfully I was acquitted of the charges, I began to grow a political conscience by a lot of people that took me in. One of those people is Melvin Dixon of the Black Panther Party, and he runs the Commemorator newspaper. He let me stay in his home for a while if I read the book by Assata Shakur. I didn't know anything about the Black Panthers. He started educating me. But when my time ran out in his home, I slept right here. I slept right here. And there are 2 types of workers that clean UC Berkeley. And I found that out while I was sleeping here. There's union workers. And then at that time, there was an undocumented workforce that showed up and checked in at Dwinell Hall at midnight. And they cleaned these buildings so that the professors and the students wouldn't have to see undocumented people. Those are the people that took care of me. And so 20 years ago, I was sleeping here. Today, I'm in your presence, and I'm truly honored. And for that, I want to say thank you. I'm still not a citizen of the United States, but I do have a green card now. And thanks to that green card and some of my journey, I just returned from Cuba. And the reason I bring that up is when I was in Cuba, has anybody been to Cuba or from Cuba? If you're from Cuba or been to Cuba, you know of the CDRs, El Comité en Defensa de la Revolución. These are committees on every block in every neighborhood who are trying to keep the revolution alive post-embargo, post-blockade, post the end of the Soviet Union. And they're trying to continue a movement of free healthcare, of free education. And when I told them about E4FC, they were floored. They said they're doing that in the United States. They're taking care of the undocumented. There's teachers and mentors and counselors that are trying to make a difference for a generation that's called an illegal alien and a wetback. They saluted you. And so from Havana, Cuba, I say revolutionary salute to E4FC and to all of you for the work that you do. I say to you, muchas gracias. I also want to thank E4FC because 2 days ago, I was in -17 weather in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Chetos. And so they worked really hard and they flew me out here and they understood my difficult circumstances. I'm at Harvard trying to get this PhD to get resources for the barrio in East Oakland, California. And so they flew me out here and I went from -17 to welcome back to the Bay. So I'm excited to be here. Did this die? Okay. This is my alma mater. It only took me 17 years to graduate, so all things are possible. And so before I begin, puro aplauso, gracias, hijo de su maíz. Me van a chiviar. This is going to be a very unconventional keynote because you have an unconventional keynote speaker to begin with. And instead of giving you data and facts and telling you about this, that, and the other, me dan permiso to go personal? Don't be that excited. Once I tell you, you're going to be like, chingado, why do you say all that? No, if you don't speak Spanish, I'm not going to translate it, but she is. So, ahí les va. So, por andar chistoso, I forgot what I was going to say. I'm about to push 40, so, you know, the mind starts to go kind of. Those of you over 40 are like, ay, ¿de qué hablas? Those of you under 40, you're like, 40? So, I want to take you back to a long time ago, but if I can ask Lisbeth Gomez, she's the co-founder of the Homies Empowerment. I'm thankful that she's here. She's going to help me out. If you can go to the next slide. I want to talk about something that's difficult to talk about. And if you're taking notes, the word is resiliency. And part of it is you have it. You came here on a Saturday. How many of you have been doing this type of work for 5 years, at least 5 years? Keep your hands up because some of you are veteranos and veteranas. Who's been doing this kind of work for a decade? Where are my 20-year vets? This doesn't mean you're old. It means you're badass. Where are my 30-year plus? Hasta con la laptop, look, multitasking in the back. Like, that's badass. 30 years and, like, emailing students, like, how you doing? You got your grant y todo eso, right? 40-year, any 40-year vets? Hijo de su madre, más o menos. So, we got some OGs in the room. So for the OGs in the room, you might not have anything to learn from me, but I want to bring you back to when you were 5 years old. Go back for me. Some of you got to go to kindergarten, some of you didn't. So can I take you back a little bit? You got to respond a little bit. It's like a call and response. I'm going to say that again. Can I take you back a little bit? Yeah. Okay. So if we go back, check out little Cesar's backpack. He thinks he's cute. He's hella skinny because he don't eat. He's living in Juchitán, Jalisco, Mexico. And he's going to school. And he's got his backpack. They don't give homework and shit, but he's got his backpack, you know. And he's all excited. And he's learning new vocabulary and he's learning new words. I'm going to try to figure out how to do this with this mic. Do I need the mic? Do I need the mic? Chingo. So I want to show you some of the words Cesar was learning. No, ¿cómo crees? The first word that Cesar learned is bastard. Because daddy walked out when he was 2. He doesn't remember this, I don't. But he left. And I don't know why he left. And before he left, he tried to cut off my hand. He was coping with alcohol and cocaine, and he tried to kill my mother that day. My mother said I saved her life. And so I can show you, I can't show the rest of you, but that's why I have these 38 stitches. And my 2-year-old hand was hanging off. But one of the first words that I learned was, you got no daddy. My mom decides I'm going to come to the United States of America. I'm coming to El Norte, but I'm coming without you. I'm going to go en una vacación, mijo. And so my mom leaves me when I was 5, and so all of a sudden I'm without a mom and a dad. And when you're a 5-year-old, and then all of a sudden new adults come in your life and they want to touch you, but not spiritually, you start going through some things. I want to fast forward to age 9 when I came to the United States and I reunited with my mom, and she had now remarried and I had a stepdad. And all of a sudden she says, somos ilegales. We're illegal. Nos dicen mojados. We're wetbacks. And we're growing up in Los Angeles with a ton of fear, trying to ride the bus, but afraid of different kind of raids. Honestly, 9-year-old me was just perdido, was lost. I didn't know how to cope. I didn't know how to deal with everything that was happening in my life. And then the attacks started coming in from La Migra. This is the first time that they showed up in La Fábrica in Hollywood and they deported my mom. Now, I want to tell you a love story, even though I'm going to run out of time. The way my mom met my stepdad, the reason he's not a complete a-hole is he tried to save her life one time. So he had fake papers, the kind you buy on the street. And don't act like y'all don't know. We're in the E4FC. Cálmense. So he had fake papers and he drove a forklift and La Fábrica, Hollywood Accessories, and my mom didn't have any papers at all. So the migra shows up with their paddy wagon and they're taking everybody, and he thinks my mom is cute, and he's trying to holler at her, trying to buy a cafecito from the lonchera, but she doesn't want to hear it. So all of a sudden he gets my mom and he throws her in a box and he raises her 25 feet above the air. And that day my mom didn't get deported. So my mom agreed to that cup of coffee. Resiliency, ¿verdad? But when my mom did get deported, the very nice stepdad changed. And so little 9-year-old Cesar had to learn to cook for himself, had to learn to take care of himself because stepdad was drinking and was caught up. And so eventually I graduated backpack though. Who's heard of Alicia Keys' song, Girl on Fire? Shit, I was boy on fire with this backpack, let us. And what I mean by that is that I was dealing with my pain by blowing things up. I was a pyro. Any pyros? Any admitted pyros in the audience? I'm watching you. So I was on fire, meaning like I couldn't handle things anymore. I couldn't handle my stepdad being so jealous of my mom even having a friend. I couldn't handle a new father. I couldn't handle a baby sister. I couldn't handle being so-called too broke for a blue light special at Kmart. I couldn't handle being undocumented. I couldn't handle that I didn't understand English. I couldn't handle constant ESL classes. Do you know any students like that? Now we need some coping strategies, and we need some resiliency strategies. I found mine. I found it at school, and I want to thank a teacher for giving me this. It's cement glue. School for me was not very useful, but I found this, and it helped me out a lot. I didn't have many positive mentors at school, but I found Elmer's glue, and I stole it. And this is how I went to bed at night. And I'm not showing this so I can get your sympathy. I'm not showing this as an advocate of this. I'm showing this because this is me at 9 years old. And when you open this, it gets really toxic quick. And I would put it inside so that I could numb the pain and try to make it to sleep. After about 45 seconds, it would be easier to sleep. And that's how I coped. I didn't have pills yet. I hadn't been introduced to Boone's Farm. Who knows Boone's Farm? And we old school. I hadn't been introduced to 40s. I hadn't graduated to these things. I hadn't started heavily, excessively eating to deal with my coping. But it's in this phase that I began to cope. Now, I just buried a friend of mine who's 40 years old who never left this backpack, never left this stage. How many of you know adult copers? Yeah. We might be those adult copers, and some of us have been in roles for 20 years helping others when we're still trying to figure out how are we resilient ourselves, and we need to graduate backpacks. Now, I was graduating to my third backpack, which looks like it's under construction because as human beings, we're constantly under construction. And as I was graduating backpacks, I finally began to learn some of the consejos my abuelita was teaching me. So as I opened this backpack to you, I began to find some things that were quite interesting in my life. I used to smoke trees. And I didn't know that marijuana had a cousin. And that cousin is sage. And those trees have cousins named cedar. I didn't know about ceremony. We've been doing ceremony like sweat lodges and temescales for thousands of years, but somehow post the Spanish, a lot of our traditions have been taken over. And so when I was reintroduced to sage and a ceremony and to rites of passages, a quinceañera is a special sacred time, not for a limousine or pictures or a baile, but it's a rites of passage of a young girl going into adulthood. We need rites of passages for young people in all of our programs. That's the role that many gangs fill. They fill the rites of passage role. I began to learn about my own rites of passage. I have a little regalito for you. Who knows who Tijerina is? Can you share with us who Tijerina is? And what do we know about Tijerina? What makes him so special? 2 grandmothers ago, I have an abuelita that I buried not too long ago. And so this tattoo that I have is not a gang tattoo. It's to honor my abuelita Socorro. And her abuelita was here when it was still Mexico. And Tijerina understood that. And then when the Mexican-American War happened 2 grandmothers ago, Article 10 of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo said the land was supposed to be respected. But 2 grandmothers later were wetbacks and illegal alien in the land of Don Peralta or Cesar Vallejo or Pio Pico or the land of indigenous people. It makes no sense. This history is criminal to call a human being an illegal alien. Are you with me? And when I found this out from Tijerina, if we can go to the next slide, I realized there's 3 keys for my resiliency. I need to know my history. How many of you can name 10 revolutionary Latinas from the U.S. that are freedom fighters? 10 mujeres. Why? Why don't we know women's history? Why don't we know Latino history like that? And we're educators. How many bachelor's degrees in the room? Raise your hand. Chingao. How many masters? Where are my masters at? Any doctorates? And you can't name 10 Latinas? Elvia Alvarado, Dilcia Pagan, Lolita Lebrón, Dolores Huerta, Rigoberta Menchú. So many freedom fighters that have come before us and that are still active. But why don't they teach us about them? I wrote these books because of that, and so I want to give you a regalito for answering that question. One of them is a pro-immigrant rights book. The other one is a history book. Which one would you like? Ahí te va. Yes, thank you. I also had to begin to find my voice. In every program that we have, we need to have outlet for young people to write and to express themselves and to have this opportunity, because in many ways, expressing yourself is very therapeutic. For me, it wasn't at Wheeler Hall. It was in the riverbed, and I would tear words onto a napkin, and one teacher called them poetry, and I began to write poetry and express myself. And some of you I may have met many moons ago when we had a movement called the Independent Spoken Word Collective about 15 years ago. And I was very blessed to be a part of that. And so part of it was learning your history, learning your voice, but also we need healing techniques. There's healing techniques from all over the world. Anybody here a student of the I Ching? The I Ching is not as popular in the United States. Check that out and do that with students. What I do in my classroom with students is we study the I Ching every day. And the I Ching is part of our curriculum. Has anybody been introduced to the Toltec wisdom of Don Ruiz and the 4 Agreements? If you want to teach it to young people, teach them the book called The Voice of Knowledge. Very easy to read and to understand. And so kids and young people and adults need techniques of how to heal. And this book for me was very powerful. I didn't realize that I had a soul wound that goes back for generations of violence that I needed to heal and that I needed to go through a process of healing. And that was part of me going through stage 3, finding not only my resiliency, but what I'm good at. I'm good at poetry. And I used to want to beat up my stepfather. I used to want to hurt him because I was tired of him hurting me. So a coach handed me a bat and he said, hit the daylights out of the ball. And you're not going to believe me. I was never on steroids, but I could hit a ball 500 feet, whether you believe me or not. It's the truth, because I was so angry. I had so much pain, and I took it out on that baseball. And I never went to prison during that time because of it. And we need to find healthy outlets to release our pain, because when you're called mojado enough, when you're called illegal alien enough, when you feel like you have no resources, no future, even though there's a DREAM Act, I came before the dreamers. I had nightmares. It feels like the world is against you, so why not just take out your own life? I was living suicide, and we need to find resiliency tactics. Let's go to the next slide. It leads to my fourth backpack. My fourth backpack is life's purpose. Some of you have figured that out. How many of you feel like you know what your life's purpose is? Who wants to share theirs? Por regalito, algo. What's your life's purpose?
Working with youth.
Say more.
I'm a child that grew up in East LA. People just look at me as a whitey. I was a güerita growing up.
Yeah.
I speak Spanish. I freak people
You're not a güerita anymore? Because you said I was a güerita. I'm just kidding.
So I live in a rural area in Yuba City, California, and I work with our youth, with our Hispanic population, because that's where my heart is.
Why?
Because of the prejudice and that I received as a young child growing up. When I grew up in a bilingual home. When I entered 5th grade, kindergarten, I was told that I could not speak Spanish. So I had lots of wounds that I put in my life, which I help many students find their next step.
Tell us your name.
Colleen.
Colleen, it's a pleasure to meet you. Can I give you one of these? Which you
Lesson
prefer?
history, please. Thank you. Muchas gracias.
Igualmente. I'm not doing my seminar in the Catholic Church today. But growing up as a Catholic schoolboy, ready to be a priest, and I committed too many sins to do that. I left the church for a while. I didn't believe in certain things. I'm not going to talk to you about God or spirituality per se. But for me, I realized I am a child of the Great Spirit. I am connected to the ocean, to the stars, to the sun and the moon. And as powerful as human beings think they are, they can't control the sun, moon, and stars. So I realized part of my life's calling is to appreciate that I'm connected to the Great Spirit. Another part of me is I needed to be a father. Having not been had a father or a father figure in that way, and I wanted to be a healthy partner. I wanted to create a healthy family. Later on, I began to develop what became life's calling, was working with young people in a very similar fashion. And so if we can go to the next slide. For me, it was really, I have 5 minutes? Are you serious? Oh my God, I still got like an hour. Chetos. I have faith. Next slide. I'm very proud of this because we just celebrated our 12-year married anniversary, my wife and I, and we have 3 wonderful kids. And they're growing up very differently. Their names are Olin, Amado, and Quetzali. They're growing up every day. They go to Harvard. They're acting like they own the land. They're acting like they're going to create a revolution. And so they're growing up very differently than the way I grew up. Next slide, please. I'm going to skip this slide, but I'm going to tell you just a little bit about it in the sense that when I found my voice, I realized I have to be an educator, but also an educator activist like you standing on the front lines. And when we marched 70 miles and we hunger strike for 26 days, we finally scored a victory against Governor Schwarzenegger. And he returned $600,000 every year to our school district for 15 years. And now West Contra Costa is one of the few school districts in California that is debt-free. And it was a struggle, but it was an important struggle. Next slide, please. I want to show you a brief video of the work that I've been called to do because part of my life's calling has been to work with young people. And I had no idea that I would need to work with the young people that are most demonized, that are considered gangbangers. And if you want to hear more about the work that I do, come to my workshop next 3rd session or 4th session. But Lisbeth and I were blessed enough to start an organization that nobody wants to fund, Homies Empowerment. And the reason nobody wants to fund it is because everybody is making money off the dead. The coroner's office the police department overtime, the cemetery, the funeral, the rosary shop, the t-shirt shop. Everybody's making money off the dead, so to stop the violence movement in the Bay Area is a fraud. And we wanted to do something different. So I'm going to play you this video and then hope that I have time for at least a couple minutes of questions.
Want to create peace among rival gang members? Well, show them they're not that different from one another. That's what this week's Jefferson Award winner is doing. Sharon Chin on the man behind an innovative program in Oakland.
In a tough East Oakland neighborhood where gang violence is a part of life, there is hope.
Come and join us for dinner.
Old rivals cook up new friendships under Cesar Cruz, co-founder of the Homies Empowerment Program.
It's really hard to kill someone when you know them. Y'all ready?
Cesar invites sworn enemies to cook and eat side by side every Wednesday night at the YMCA on 45th Avenue. Afterward, there's food for thought, a message of peace.
You can be a peaceful gang member. You can be someone who takes care of the community.
Take Adrian Arias and Nestor Ramirez. They live in rival neighborhoods, but discovered they can find common ground. They share the grief gang violence can bring.
We can relate, like, the things we go through, but in a different way, you know? They're gonna go through the same pain that we go through, and this is all the same thing, you know? We're just gonna learn at each other, and it's never gonna stop until we stop ourselves.
Cesar knows the vicious cycle. Before he became an educator, he grew up in a broken home and got in trouble with the law. He felt compelled to help stop.
Why'd they have to say that?
At the East Bay YMCA, where he's on staff.
Lisbeth, let's pause it because we're running out of time. Let's go to the next slide. If we go to the next slide. For me, after about 20 years, my life's calling took me in a different direction. These are some of the generations of students I've been privileged enough to know. And it's been an amazing journey. But City Hall, police departments don't want to fund an organization like Homies Empowerment that want to take on gang injunctions, that want to take on a prison population that is continuing to grow, that has money for prison and money for war, but not money for programs like this. And we're going to take them on and we're going to be victorious. So if you go to the next slide, even though it was very difficult, I made a decision to leave the Bay Area for a little bit and to head off to Harvard. And part of going to Harvard to get this doctoral program, I'm the first Mexican immigrant male in its program's history, and it's to try to do something different. Will you play this one?
My name is Educator. I am a certified wife. You can't put in words how proud I am. Harvard is so known throughout, you know, internationally.
So, it's a new program. It's only 3 years old. It's called Doctorate in Educational Leadership. They only accept 25 people a year. For me, I just feel extremely honored that they've never had a Mexican immigrant male in the program. It just means a lot to our people, to our families, to my students, because it's like, oh, my teacher's going to Harvard. My name is Cesar Cruz. I'm the co-founder of the Homies Empowerment Program. It's a program here in Oakland, California, an independent organization. I'm also the Dean of Students at Rise High School. A lot of our people come from kinships and tribal societies where we're united, we're a community. Not this individualistic, racial algebra, survival of the fittest, one person at the top of communities.
He actually was a motivation, and he's like my hero.
Can I brag about your book? What we're working on the book, and so what they're doing is they're peer editing. I want to celebrate their voice. So they're working on their bios, their stories, their journal, and we're calling it Youth Wisdom. As cheesy as this looks, I'll end with this. There's some hidden gifts that we've been given. Every single one of us have it. Imagine when young people find their hidden gifts. When they look at their past, go through the process of healing and see it differently, man, a new world is possible. That's what we're trying to teach young people. This particular class, as hard as it's been, is my last class after 19 years. And I feel a duty to them to impart whatever I can, to leave whatever I can, and then they got to carry it out.
I feel so good because my dad is going to Harvard. I'm going to be going to school there.
Next slide. The problem when you give agency and help young people find their voice is my 6-year-old's nuts. He's talking about why he doesn't celebrate Christopher Columbus, why he doesn't pledge allegiance, and it's first grade. So be careful, not too much agency. No, I'm just kidding. Before I end, I do want to talk about that box because it's important that everybody find their hidden gifts. And for me, I had to come to a realization part of resiliency. And I had to begin to look at things in a different way. And this is where I'll end in shortage of time, is I really want to thank my father. I want to thank my father for trying to cut off my hand because I still have it and I'm using it now. And I get to hold my children with it and I get to write books and I get to raise a fist. But my dad leaving us was a gift because he stopped hurting us. He stopped hurting me and he stopped hurting my mom. And even though my father committed suicide when I was 21, I forgive you, Dad. And look at us now. I want to thank my mom for leaving me in Mexico without her and making her journey to the United States because in Mexico, I learned my roots. And in milking a cow and in living in Juchitlan, Jalisco, in a pueblito, I learned a lot of values that I couldn't have gotten in the United States of America. So I want to thank my mom for making that journey without me. Thank you, Mom. I want to thank the fact that my mom got deported, not because she was deported or because I'm thankful to immigration, but I became self-reliant. When there was a man knocked out on the floor because he was drunk, I learned to cook for myself and clean for myself and take myself to school when I was 9 years old. And that self-reliance you can never take away from me. Once you know you're self-reliant, you have it for the rest of your life. So I'm thankful for that. I used to be undocumented. But when I found my voice and I found Tijerina and I found my calling, I'm unafraid. If the worst thing you can do is lock me up and I'm Nelson Mandela or Mumia Abu-Jamal, if the worst thing you can do is deport me, you've done nothing to me. You've done nothing to me. I am unafraid and definitely unapologetic. I'm thankful for finding my voice. I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak before you. And I want to say, if you can go to the very last slide, if you'd like to support the work that we do, any book purchase that you make goes directly to that work. And also, I'm struggling to survive at Harvard because I am still not a citizen. I'm still not eligible for a lot of things, and it is very expensive out there. If you want to fund me surviving second semester because it's a real struggle, we pay a rent of $2,300 a month for a 2-bedroom apartment. And I didn't come to ask for funds, but any support that you give, you go to Indiegogo and you type in homies. That'll help us tremendously. But that's not how I want to end. I think it's important that you go back to being 5 years old. And what was your given reality? And how did you cope? How have you become resilient? What is your life's purpose? And if you haven't found out, explore. And how do you help people go through that journey? And if you do, your job is done. And that is our work with dreamers, with non-dreamers, with people living nightmares, with the documented and the undocumented. That is revolutionary work, because when you raise a voice, not like this one, because this is not an exemplary voice, but when you raise someone that stands tall and you raise a generation of warriors standing tall, imagine the world we will create. Muchas gracias. God bless you. Thank you so much. Set up for your workshop.